Hi there, I'm Davey Cretin for Cretin Classics, and I have a little bit of a rant here. I noticed a bit of a parallel I want to talk about between two of my favorite bands, Yes and Styx. Bit of a parallel here. I was speaking to my friend Joseph Sudo and Tom Jennings. We do a lot of shows together on their channel, Rock Show Critique, out of Buffalo, New York, upstate, all the way by Canada. I've been on their channel a lot of times, and eventually I will repay the favor and have them on my channel. So I was talking to them in a chat because Joseph said he's going to see Styx on the second date of their current tour. They're touring with Foreigner and John Waite. And it got me thinking that there's a big parallel, no pun intended, all you Yes fans, song parallels. There's a parallel between the bands because in 1998, Styx had regrouped. They wanted to record a studio album. They hadn't done a studio album in 15 years with their well-known lineup from the 70s. And they had all of the three key songwriters back. Dennis DeYoung on keyboards and vocals, wrote a lot of songs. James J.Y. Young, on guitar and vocals, and he wrote the occasional song. And Tommy Shaw, guitar and vocals, and he wrote a lot of songs. So they had just gotten off of a successful tour called Return to Paradise for 96 and 97. In 98, they blocked some time out to record a new studio album. They hadn't done one since 1983. Kilroy was here. Very divisive album, and the band went on hiatus after that. So, after a lot of things I'm going to skip over with Damn Yankees and Styx playing without Shaw, they got back together for a tour. They wanted to do a record. But in January of 1998, Dennis DeYoung came down with a very bad flu, an extremely bad flu. He had a very high fever, and it affected his vision. He became very sensitive to light, and he got heavy fatigue. So if he did any kind of extensive work or what have you, he got very tired very fast. So he couldn't go on the road with the band, and they had recorded the record. Dennis DeYoung, working from his home in Chicago, had contributed 5 songs to the new record. The rest of the record was about 8 songs or so from Tommy Shaw, with a little help from James Young, but mainly Tommy Shaw. So they put together this new album that came out mid-1999 called Brave New World. Shaw and Young wanted to tour the record, and Dennis DeYoung said, I need some time, just give me 6 months to recover. And the other guys said, no, we're going on tour. They hired a replacement, and they went on tour. So Dennis DeYoung took off time from work. He eventually got better, and he started touring on his own. Wanted to get back with Styx. They said no. He figured, okay, the ship has sailed, so to speak. Come sail away. I'll get back to my solo career. So he started touring. Then VH1 had a series at the time in the 90s and the early 2000s called Behind the Music. On this show, they interviewed Dennis DeYoung separately from Tommy Shaw and James Young. When they interviewed Shaw and Young, they had made some disparaging remarks about Dennis DeYoung, and he wasn't happy about it, and he had every right not to be happy about it. So he sued them for the rights to the name Styx, because he had co-formed the band in the 1960s with the Panazzo brothers in Chicago. James Young and their original other guitar player, John Cyrulewski, were brought in later. So this was Dennis DeYoung's band, along with Chuck and John Panazzo. Unfortunately, John Panazzo had passed in the mid-90s, and his brother, Chuck Panazzo, wasn't well enough to tour. He only did the occasional show with Styx. We usually come on for 2 or 3 songs, the encore or so, to perform with the band. Dennis DeYoung wanted back in. They wouldn't let him. He sued them. Tommy Shaw and James Young retained the rights to the band name Styx. And Dennis DeYoung could go on tour and say formerly of Styx or the music of Styx, but he could not say the voice of Styx, even though Dennis DeYoung, Styx had 8 top 10 hits on the Billboard charts, the Hot 100 singles charts. Styx had 8 top 10 hits. Dennis DeYoung wrote 7 of those hits. Tommy Shaw wrote 1 of those hits. As a solo artist, Dennis DeYoung had a top 10 single, Desert Moon, from his debut album, solo album of the same name from 1984. Tommy Shaw released a bunch of solo records. He never had a top 10 hit. You could say it was Dennis's band when he started it with the Panazzos, brought other guys in. In fact, when the band went on hiatus, James Young and the Panazzo brothers said to Dennis, let's reform the band. By that time, Tommy Shaw had gotten into Damn Yankees, and he didn't want to go back with Styx. And Young and the Panazzos were always saying to Dennis, hey, we should do an album, we should tour. And Dennis DeYoung said, not without Tommy, I'm not going to do it. They finally convinced him. They got Glenn Burtnick, they did a record. It did okay. They had a top 3 hit with the song Show Me the Way. But that was really it. And then the band went on hiatus until they reformed after Damn Yankees broke up with Tommy Shaw. They had this successful tour. They put out Brave New World, which was a big stiff, in my opinion. And it's one of my least favorite Styx albums. It's not a very cohesive record. So when Dennis was better, he wanted to get back in the band. He was told no. He sued them, and then they said, well, now you're definitely not coming back. So to this day, Dennis DeYoung has never rejoined Styx. This all started in 1998. 10 years later, in 2008, Jon Anderson, the singer of Yes, for almost their whole career, he had left in the late 70s, and he missed an album called Drama that came out in 1980, but he was back on board for 90125 in 1983. So in 2008, Steve Howe, Chris Squire, Alan White of Yes wanted to make a new record and tour. Well, they didn't want to make a new record. They wanted to tour. And Jon Anderson came down, and let me get this right so I say it exactly how it is, with an acute respiratory failure. He had trouble breathing. As a singer, I used to sing, and I have asthma, so I always have to carry an inhaler with me. And when you can't breathe, it's not a fun thing. So I know what Jon Anderson went through. And from what they said later about this event, he almost died from it. This was a very serious thing. You can't breathe and there's no relief. It's extremely scary, trust me. So they got a replacement singer and they went out without him. Because Yes has always switched members. They've had close to 24 members or so over their 50-plus year history now. So Yes is an evolving entity, and they always have different players in the band. And it's always uniquely Yes somehow. But the thing is, Anderson said, I need some time to recover. Squire, Howe, and White said no. They found a replacement singer, French-Canadian, named Benoit David. He has the same last name as my first name. Saw the guy perform live. He was very good with the band. They went on tour as Yes, and Anderson was kicked to the curb, so to speak. And this alienated a lot of core Yes fans, much like when Tommy Shaw and James Young and Styx went out without Dennis DeYoung. It was his band, now it's their band. And now with Yes, all of a sudden Anderson was gone. They got Benoit David. They made a studio, they toured from 2008 to 2010 or so. They recorded a new studio record for 2011 called Fly From Here with Benoit David on vocals. Produced by Trevor Horn, who was in the band for 1980s Drama album. So Yes went on being Yes without Jon Anderson, their focal point, their guiding light, so to speak, just like Styx did without Dennis DeYoung, who was also the big idea man, their guiding light, the one who brought everyone together, and they were a cohesive unit, and they made records and toured, and both bands were machines during the 70s, early 80s for Styx. Pardon me, just had to wet my whistle. So while they're out on tour in late 2011, all of a sudden Benoit David, the singer of Yes, develops some respiratory problems, and he can't perform properly. Now, I had seen him when he was good, when he first joined Yes. He was very good. He could hit the high notes. He was in a Yes tribute band. That's how Squire found him online. Saw videos of Benoit David performing Yes songs, said this is the guy for the band. I saw Yes at Jones Beach. It was in late summer, early fall, 2011, and Benoit David couldn't hit the high notes in Owner of a Lonely Heart. The whole ending section, he couldn't do it. It was very sad to watch. So he told Squire, I'm having trouble breathing and singing. And Squire said, this is allegedly, according to Benoit David, fix it. Just very unsympathetic to Benoit David's plight. Benoit David realized he couldn't do it, and he left the band in January of 2012. All of a sudden, a month later, Squire and the boys found a new singer by the name of Jon Davison. And since 2012, for 12 years now, Jon Davison has been in Yes. He's the singer. Unfortunately, Chris Squire passed away. Also, Alan White passed away. So now it's Steve Howe on guitar. He's leading the band. Not even an original member. He joined on the third record after the second record. He toured for the second record, joined to make the third studio album, the Yes album. He was in and out of the band a bunch of times. Squire's gone, passed away, and passed the torch to Billy Sherwood, who now plays bass and sings. Alan White passed away, and they recruited Jay Shellen to play the drums, who has played with Billy Sherwood in other bands previous to Yes. And Jeff Downes has been back on keyboards for about a decade now, over a decade, 12 years, since they made the Fly From Here record, 12, 13 years. Jeff Downes is back in the band. So it's Squire, Jeff Downes, the other guys. It's almost more of an American band than it is a British band. It's a hybrid band now. But Anderson wanted back in, and he was rebuffed. He was told no. So these guys, Dennis DeYoung and Jon Anderson, they have something in common. They were co-founders of their bands. They were too ill to play. They weren't given proper time to heal. And I know as a singer how hard it could be sometimes. If you get sick and you have to sing with a cold or a virus or anything, it makes it extremely hard, very difficult. Did the guys not have enough sympathy? Were they unsympathetic to the plight of their singers? Did they need money? Did they make bad investments? Were they cash-strapped? I mean, you look up the net worth of these guys, and they're worth millions of dollars. I don't know. Is it drugs and alcohol? Is it just ego? I think a lot of it is ego. A lot of these guys have big egos, and the fact that in the 70s, behind his back, they used to call Jon Anderson Napoleon because that's the way he ran the band. He had the ideas. He forced the guys into doing certain ideas and themes, and mostly for most of the 70s, it worked. I mean, the band was huge. Yes, we're a huge band in the 70s. Styx, under Dennis DeYoung's leadership, he came up with a lot of the themes, a lot of the conceptual pieces, and for the most part, it really worked very well until Kilroy was here. I mean, Roboto, Mr. Roboto, was a number 3 single, if memory serves, on the Billboard charts. It only sold 1 million compared to the last bunch of records that had sold 2 or 3 million. So the band saw it as a failure. They carried a big stage show around. They played festivals with the stage show, and Shaw and Young didn't like it. But that was Dennis's idea, and it wasn't a great idea to go in front of a festival crowd acting and showing a short little film and just playing characters. It didn't work on the summer circuit in America in 1983, and that caused Styx to go on hiatus. But Dennis DeYoung, Jon Anderson, they sort of had their legacies stolen right out from under them. The rug was pulled out from under them, I think. I feel bad for the guys. With other bands, Steve Walsh from Kansas retired. He just wasn't up to it anymore. He was probably, arguably, the greatest singer in rock in the 70s. That voice of Steve Walsh was amazing. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see Steve Walsh with Kansas until the 90s, and by then, the early 90s, 93, 94, when I first saw them, Steve Walsh's voice was starting to go, but he soldiered on, made a couple of records, a really great one in 2000 called Somewhere to Elsewhere, but you could tell his voice wasn't as pure as it was in the 70s, just due to life on the road, smoking, etc., etc. And what can you do? He retired. The band went on without him. He's not trying to get back into the band. He's retired. He does music occasionally. He's doing his own thing. But Dennis DeYoung, he even wants to do one last tour with Styx. As he says, he wants to get Larry, Moe, and Curly back together. And Shaw and Young are refusing DeYoung's offer. They're probably never going to play together again. And it's a shame for the fans, for the diehards like me, who go back to 1977 and discovered Styx with The Grand Illusion, hearing it on FM radio and falling in love with that song, and then the band. Others say, well, Dennis DeYoung made some good solo records. Styx is making good records. You get the best of both worlds. What happened when Roth left Van Halen? He made one great record, one decent record, and then after that, he fell off a cliff. Van Halen had #1 records. The records didn't sell as many millions of copies as the first brace of David Lee Roth fronted albums. And personally, I just don't think the Hagar records are good. They're not great. It's always the original chemistry. It's always the original band lineup. They're better together than apart. It's just how I feel. And in this case, I sort of think that Jon Anderson and Dennis DeYoung, they both got shafted by their bands. I mean, the guys didn't want to work with Anderson anymore. And in Styx, the guys didn't want to work with DeYoung anymore. DeYoung didn't like to tour all that much. And these other guys, they say they're road dogs. Shaw and Young, we're road dogs. We just want to play. And how long did it take them to make a new album? They haven't made that many since Dennis DeYoung hasn't been in the band. Everyone seems to love the last 2 Styx albums. I like The Mission. It's a good record. Crash of the Crown never hit me. Everyone raves about those records. They just never hit me. Dennis DeYoung made good solo records. They're not amazing. I always thought these guys would be better together than apart. But this is the way it is. The last 2 Yes albums, well, The Quest is not too great. That would be in my bottom 5 of Yes albums, if not bottom 2 or 3. And Mirror to the Sky is a better album, but it's missing Jon Anderson. I wish these guys could all work out their differences and get together and play in the sandbox and be friends. But I think it has to do a lot with money and ego and not wanting to be bossed around. And you get the voices in your head from managers and friends. Oh, you're the best. You're the star. You don't need that guy. I think apparently they do. I really think they do. So that's just my opinion on this subject. What are your thoughts on the subject? Put it in the comments below. Like, subscribe, comment. I'm Davey Cretin for Cretin Classics, and I would like to say, everybody rock out, prog on, and pogo. Take care. I'll see you soon. And in my next video that's coming shortly, it will definitely be a ranking of these guys from New York, Blue Oyster Cult. Here's the box set with all their records from Columbia when they were on Epic, CBS, Columbia. I have all their albums. I like and love all their albums. So my next video will be a Blue Oyster Cult ranking. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.